Hello, everybody. We have Jack joining us today. We got Drink, and I think we're ready to start. So today's video is actually inspired by one of my friends who's having a lot of indecision when it comes to bottom surgery. She's trying to figure out her feelings about it, and just kind of figured this is something that we need to talk about. It's just another one of those little things that, psychologically can be a little bit difficult to sort out Yes. It can be a little bit difficult to sort out your thoughts and feelings, even when it comes to something that you know you want. And paradoxically, something that you know that you want can fill you with a lot of uncertainty and hesitation. And so today we're going to be talking about sorting out those feelings and getting ready mentally and emotionally for any kind of medical transition steps. So that can be surgery, or it can be hormones, or anything. It can be anything. And heck, it doesn't even have to be medical, now that I think about it. There are some big steps that you can make in your transition that are not medical that can be really scary to sit down and commit the time and energy and go through an irreversible change, especially just the word irreversible, even if it's something that you want to be irreversible. There's a pretty massive stigma, I think, against changing something about yourself that society sees as a core of your being, whether that be your name or your body. People freak out a little bit about tattoos still. That's still a thing. It's a body modification. If you get a piercing or scarification, a lot of people consider that a really bad thing. To plastic surgery, even for cis people, there's a lot of stigma attached to the concept of changing your body. And that's something that I would want you to keep in mind going forward. That sometimes, even though you really want to change something about yourself, you still might feel hesitant because there's a little bit of stigma that you may have internalized. This whole process is about investigating your feelings and your thoughts and trying to figure out where these feelings and thoughts come from. Whenever you finally pinpoint them, you can't just make them go away, but you can at least have a discussion with yourself to figure out this thought or this feeling, is this a reasonable thing to stop me from something that I want? So we're going to go through a lot of common stop gaps to help you identify where the thoughts and feelings are coming from so you can work them out. And I'm going to talk a bit about my experience and how I've managed to work some things out. And to give you an idea of the permanent changes and scary things that I've done in my transition. First of all, I have anxiety and I'm extremely indecisive. I hate making decisions. And I was really scared when I started testosterone. I've been on testosterone for 2.5 years, almost 3 years. I have removed the boobers. I have also legally changed my name, which is really intimidating. I don't know why I'm still pretending to hold invisible boobs. And to make this video even relevant for me right now, I have a hysterectomy scheduled for sometime in July, just a couple months from now. For me, at least, the elephant in the room when it comes to making big changes in your transition, irreversibility and permanence, those things are very, very scary to me. I have generalized anxiety, and I have a lot of trouble making very small decisions, and very big decisions take a lot of mental and emotional work for me to figure out if it's the right thing for me to do or not, because I will agonize over spending $15. I'm just well, if I spend these $15, I will never have these $15 ever again. And what if I buy the wrong thing? Maybe I should get the slightly upgraded thing for extra $5 more, but it's difficult. Making decisions is really hard. And whenever it comes to the permanence aspect, if you buy something for $15 and you don't like it, you might be able to return it and get your $15 back. But obviously, if you throw out your uterus, you can't say, hey, actually, can I get that back, please? So it complicates things a little bit. It gives you more pressure to be 100% certain that this is what you want to do. There's no second guessing it. And that's a lot of pressure. It's for sure a lot of fucking pressure. And to be honest, it's kind of a shame that we can't be more vulnerable about this discussion, because we we do agonize about this shit. Trans people do spend a lot of fucking time and energy trying to decide like what is right for us. Anytime we try to be open about that, we get criticized for not being 100% sure. People really do expect that out of us. I think as trans people, we are expected to be like intuitively correct about like the steps we make in our transition, but it doesn't come that easily. It's not something that always okay. I'll give you some personal experience. So I started having dysphoria about my chest when I started growing a chest immediately. I didn't know that it was something I was going to have problems with. I was told, you know, when I was like 10 years old in a puberty video when I was in school, that was the thing that was going to happen to me. I was also told that I was going to have periods, and I was really scared of periods starting. But I guess that I was like so scared and overwhelmed by like the periods and the potential of like pregnancy and things like that, that I completely overlooked the whole growing boobs thing. And lo and behold, around age 12 to 13, I grew the boobas, and I fucking hated it so much. And like, it sounds like an exaggeration, but there was not a day that went by after I grew boobs that like I wasn't like fucking humiliated by what my body did to me. You know, it was devastating growing a chest, and like dysphoria is a little bit different for everybody, and some people don't even have dysphoria, and that's totally cool. You can be trans without dysphoria. But for me, like, it was a very, very overwhelming like despair and anguish and embarrassment. It kind of felt like, imagine you're a girl and you identify as a lady, and somebody puts like one of those like huge fat cans, like a giant can of an energy drink, like in your pants to make it look like a funny bulge. And they put it there, and you're like, haha, funny joke. Look at this in my pants. Haha. But then it never went away. Like, it morphed onto your body, and like no matter what you do, you gotta like worry about what outfits you wear. You worry that you look inappropriate. You think you like look like a joke. It makes you feel like a joke. It makes you really fucking insecure. Makes you not want to look in the mirror. It's bad. Is it noticeable that I forget to breathe while I'm talking sometimes? But the point is that my chest dysphoria was very severe and very consistent. It was every day, and it made me fucking miserable. And I was 26, 27 whenever I had the opportunity to get top surgery, and I was it sounds really silly because it sounds like it should be obvious, right? It sounds like an obvious decision to be like, well, if you fucking hate having a chest like this bad, then obviously top surgery is right for you. And that may be like, I don't know. It's not like you can just go to a therapist and your therapist knows you better than you do. The only person who can figure out if this is the right thing for you is you. And despite fucking hating this part of my body and wishing that it would have been gone, wishing that puberty never did that to me for, let's see, 15 years, it was still a really hard decision. It was really hard because I kept second guessing myself and thinking like, well, what if I regret it? What if I can never get them back if I change my mind? And then I tell myself, well, like, I'm not gonna change my mind. I fucking have wanted this for 15 years. I've hated the way my chest looks for 15 years. This is a very silly thing to worry about. And that's kind of invalidating myself. It's not a silly thing to worry about. And looking back, you know, it's now like even more obvious to me that top surgery was the right thing for me. And honestly, I would have benefited from transitioning earlier, but I didn't know a whole lot about trans people or transition until I was in my 20s. But the point is that the fear of regret is a very big roadblock for a lot of people when it comes to transition. So that common fear of regret really should make you ask, how common is regret when it comes to trans people medically transitioning? And hey, guess what? There's data on that. We have answers. Let's go find the answers. This website in general is a pretty great resource when it comes to trans stuff. A lot of the time people will be like, hey, transition makes people
unalive
themselves. And then you're like, actually, we have data and it does the opposite. But thank you for your input, sir. So let's see if we can find some regret rate stuff. Okay, so I'm going to read like the first sentence or two of this so you know what's going on. We conducted a systematic literature review of all peer-reviewed articles published in English between 1991 and June 2017 that assessed the effect of gender transition on transgender well-being. We identified 55 studies that consist of primary research on this topic, of which 51, 93%, found that gender transition improves the overall well-being of transgender people, while 7% report mixed or null findings. We found no studies concluding that gender transition overall causes harm. And so basically they just took a shit ton of research and looked at all of it and evaluated it. And they have a list of findings here, and the one that we are interested in is regret rates. Regrets following gender transition are extremely rare and have become even rarer as both surgical techniques and social support have improved. Pooling data from numerous studies demonstrates a regret rate ranging from 0.3% to 3.8%. There's your regret rate. Extremely fucking low. Regrets are most likely to result from a lack of social support after transition or poor surgical outcomes using older techniques. So, you might have like seen these documentaries or people online who are like, I had surgery, I medically transitioned, and now I hate my life. I wish I never did it. A lot of those people are older people, and they had surgery decades ago, back when the surgical techniques were not as good as they are now, back when people were more likely to have poor outcomes of surgery, poor aesthetic outcomes, poor sensation outcomes, etc. So this incredibly low regret rate is something that I was aware of before I went in for top surgery, before I made the phone call and set up my appointment and everything. You know, it helped a little bit. It did help a little bit, but still, even though it's like 0.3% to 3.8%, very, very low. But then you still think, but what if I'm one of those? What if I'm one of the people who regrets having surgery? Anxiety really do be like that. And this is the part where I say something a little bit spicy, which is that even though you feel intuitively like the only answer is to be 100% sure, sometimes it depends on like the type of person you are. But I'm the kind of person who is never 100% sure. And so for me, at least, I had to accept that I wasn't going to be 100% sure. I was going to be like 98%. And that was the highest I was going to get, because that's just the type of person I am. That's the way my brain works. And that might be the case for you, or you might be the kind of person who can wait, and you might be the kind of person who has your anxiety under control enough to the point that you can be 100% sure about something. You might be that kind of person. To be honest, though, I think that kind of person is probably in the minority. I was not 100% sure whenever I started testosterone. Again, I was like 98% sure. And this, I can understand, can be a little bit contentious. I think that there are some trans people who fool themselves into thinking that they were 100% sure. But like, I don't know. I don't see it. I know that a lot of us feel the pressure to pretend that we were 100% sure since the fucking second we were born. We do have that pressure to be extremely confident about our decisions. And we do also feel a pressure to not make vulnerable videos like this, where transphobes can be like, look, see, this mentally ill little girl didn't even know that she wanted surgery, but she got it anyway, and she's telling people, sorry for misgendering myself, it's probably a fucked up thing to do, but I think it's kind of funny. And she did it anyway because the transgenders told her it was okay. And now she's telling other transgender people who want to be transgenders that it's okay. And yeah, no, people are a little bit silly. And like that's another part I think of. We don't want to be wrong, right? We really don't want to be wrong about ourselves and the things that we want. And holy crap, being trans is so stigmatized. Like, can you imagine, like, being a detransitioner? Detransition is, again, very rare because regret is very, very rare. And the people who do detransition often do it because they don't have social support and because they face discrimination, not because they found out they're not actually trans. Some people find out that they're not trans and they detransition, but it's very rare. But anyways, I can't imagine how bad it would feel to even just change my name. You know, like, my name was something that I knew I was going to be very, very indecisive about, just like with surgery and any other medical change. Whenever I make a character in a video game, I also agonize about that decision. It's been a problem for a very, very long time. I've been playing games since I was a little child. And ideally, the decision is made for me. My favorite is whenever somebody else is like, oh no, this character's name is Link, so you're Link. I'm like, good. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think about accidentally choosing the wrong name and then playing 300 hours on this account and then going like, I fucking hate this name. I want a different name. So even whenever I chose my name, there was this like anxiety where I knew. The thing is like, part of this is knowing yourself and knowing like how hard it can be to satisfy your own like decision-making process. For me, it is very, very difficult to satisfy my own decision-making process. And it's very, very hard for me to commit to anything. Extremely indecisive person here. And so whenever I chose my name, I spent like a couple of months just like privately experimenting with a couple of names that I was interested in and talking to my girlfriend about it. And then I asked my girlfriend to use the name, like a couple of different names for like a month or two. And I told myself, okay, this is the important part. We're getting to the psychological shit, like stuff that you can practice. I told myself and reminded myself of these patterns of indecision and that I have a terrible habit of just being so fucking indecisive that it paralyzes me. Like, what do they call it? Analysis paralysis. And it sucks because like you can't just like move on with your life and like do the shit you want to do. And to be honest, in a name, the things that mattered to me were like I wanted an unambiguously like masculine name, like a name that was associated with guys, and like a name that people would never call gender neutral, you know? And so, you know, Oliver checked the box. But another thing that was kind of important to me was that I was actually kind of excited to have a name that was no longer basic because my dead name was like in the like top 5 or something of the most popular girl names when I was born. And so like I would hear my name all the time. People would say my name and they weren't talking to me, and I really hated it. And I learned to stop answering to my name. So I was like, yes, this is my opportunity to choose a unique name. And then I fucking accidentally chose a really basic name. And I found that out like a few months after I already came out. But I had decided before I came out that like, I'm going to stick with this name. Like, there are a lot of trans people who will publicly experiment with their name, and that's fine. I'm not shitting on you guys. But for me personally, I feel like really rude, and I feel I don't want people to have to make adjustments to accommodate me very much. That's just how I am. And so I could not ask somebody to use another like, I couldn't change my name 2 times. I was only gonna change my name 1 time, period. And, that's a lot of pressure because then to me, I have turned the name into a permanent, irreversible change. At least from my own standard. It doesn't technically have to be. And so there was like a whole lot of pressure to get it right the first time. But the way that I alleviated a lot of that pressure was by reminding myself that pretty much no matter what, I was going to have some problems with my name. In the future, I am going to face moments where my name just isn't perfect, And there is no perfect name. There really isn't a perfect name. And there's not a perfect surgery outcome. And there's not a perfect hormonal change outcome. Like, there's not a perfect puberty. So letting go of that perfection in the face of permanence, I think that's really important. I think that's a really big step. Another thing to consider when it comes to like this idea of being 100% correct is that, like, to be honest, I really don't think it's possible. And one of the reasons why I don't think it's possible to like be 100% sure of what you want when it comes to like future changes is because we don't live in the future yet and we haven't experienced the future yet. So, like, how can you be 100% sure that you want top surgery if you don't actually know what your top surgery is going to look like after you've had it? How do you know if you want top surgery if you can't peer into the future and to see that like everything goes okay? Like, when you think about it that way, it doesn't make sense to assume that you can be 100% sure. So think about it this way, right? So how many cishet people get married and they probably think like, I'm 100% sure that I want to get married to this person right now. Like, they probably are even more certain and less hesitant than the average trans person is before they start HRT or something. They probably agonized about it less. And I'm not trying to shit on these people, but like they're very confident and they get married and then like half of them or something to get divorced, and it's something that society expects. At least like nowadays, it's less of an expectation that it's going to be a forever, permanent, lifelong thing, which is a good thing. I think people should get divorced if they're in a bad situation or if they're not happy or whatever. But like, imagine a world where like every time somebody thought about doing something, considered doing anything, then like everybody gathered around, like swarmed them to warn them, you might regret this. Like some people get divorced, right? You know that your relationship might not last forever, right? Like, you can't predict the future. Why do you think you can do this? Like, that would be a really silly world to live in, right? To criticize any person who wants to make a decision before they make it because there's a chance that it might be wrong, or and like, I don't know, we've got the approximately 50% or whatever divorce rate. I haven't looked it up. I don't actually know what it is. Everybody just says 50%. That's the meme. So we got like the 50% divorce rate, and then we have the transition regret rate that's 0.3 to 3.8%. And everybody's fucking going, irreversible damage, brr, don't transition, you're gonna regret it, you should be scared, you shouldn't do it. But like, nobody's fucking doing that to people whenever they get engaged. Maybe we should be doing that to people when they get engaged. No, not really. I think we should probably leave people the fuck alone and let them make their own decisions, because they probably know, they probably have an idea of what's right for them better than you do. They probably know their future spouse more than you do. They probably know their capacity for dealing with a relationship better than you do. Maybe. I don't know. I think respecting people's autonomy would be pretty cool, actually. When you transition, when you change anything about yourself, you are changing a known for an unknown, and that's always going to be scary. Before I started testosterone, one of the things that really frightened me about it is that I had like a very, very typical cis lady body. and it fit very neatly into the expectations of like beauty standards and what ladies are supposed to look like, what an attractive lady is supposed to look like. And for me to take all of those features and say, actually, this is a boy now. And knowing that my bone structure wasn't going to change very much because I was like, 26 years old. Like, I knew that I had a known that I was trading for an unknown. My known was that I knew I had this like standard, normal, desirable body for the gender that I was like fulfilling, for the role that I was fulfilling. And so it felt like a gamble to be like, even though I want these things, these are the things that I actually want for me and my body, but I know that other people wouldn't choose this for me and my body. I know that like to other people, this is less normal, less attractive, more unusual. And that's like something that can be really distressing and something that really sucks to go through. You've been surrounded by gender enforcement and like a shit ton of expectations for what your body and what your expression is supposed to be like since you were born. Actually, no, before you were born. These expectations have all been laid out for you. And so, for 25 years, I was praised for being like, for fitting into that stereotypical mold of what a lady was supposed to be like. And I was told over and over that the features that I had were good and attractive, and that, changing them would be like a bad thing, that they would make me less valuable. And so it can be really scary to be like, okay, well, everybody told me that the way that my body was or the way that my expression was a good thing about me. And I don't think it's a good thing about me, but everybody else wants me to have it. Making this change where you go from having like a typical body and a typical life to having an atypical body and an atypical life, where you're going to experience like discrimination and harassment and shit like that just for like living in a body that makes you more comfortable. It can be really difficult to make that decision. A lot of the time it just feels like you're shooting yourself in the foot, like why would I do this to myself? I already have such a nice setup, And depending on like where you spend time online or what kind of friends you have, you can have like this constant barrage of transphobic shit and people saying like horrible shit about trans people's bodies. And that can make you really hesitant to go through some of these changes, even changes that you really want. Again, at this point, you might notice that there can be a lot of thoughts, a lot of like conflicting thoughts when it comes to the steps that you want to make in your transition. So writing things down can be really helpful. Something that I actually did before I had my top surgery was I made like a video letter to myself. I might have like written a letter and made like a video to my future self. And imagining the future in that way and talking to my post-op self was like a really good exercise to like, I don't know, like imagining the things that could go wrong, but also imagining the benefits. I don't know, it was just sort of like a meditative exercise where the future becomes like a little bit more clear to you, I guess. Even though we actually can't predict the future, I think it could be a really helpful exercise to just sit down and like try to talk to your future post-op self. There are a lot of outside influences that have probably thoroughly worked their way into your head, and they can be really hard to get out. Another thing that can get kind of lost in this discussion is like cultural or political significance of a body part, and how that like cultural and political significance can impact your identity and the way that you think about yourself and the way that you interact with the world. So my example of this would be my upcoming hysterectomy. It was very, very hard for me to make the decision to get rid of my uterus because I don't think it's any secret that uteruses are very politicized and very culturally significant. And I live in the US where we are constantly, especially recently, having to fight for reproductive access. And when I was 19 years old, I actually had an abortion. I was in an abusive relationship, really bad situation, couldn't afford to eat. It's hard for me to, like, okay, here's my thing. You can get an abortion for any fucking reason. I don't give a shit, but I tell my story whenever I tell people I had an abortion because, frankly, if you think that somebody should starve to death while they're pregnant, like, you're actually the piece of shit. Like, I couldn't afford to eat. I literally couldn't afford to eat. So, if you think that having a baby with a person who sexually assaulted you almost every day for 2.5 years while you couldn't afford to eat, if you think that's a good thing to do, I very much question your moral compass. And I can't take anything you say about my abortion seriously, frankly. But you don't have to have a sob story to get an abortion. That's my thing. You can just be like, fucking, oops, I got pregnant and I don't want it. Bye. Flush it down the toilet. That's my motto. Flush it down. Fucking parasites, get the hell out. So anyway, because of this experience, having like reproductive access, like being pro-choice was a very, very big part of my identity. And being somebody who could be negatively affected by restriction on abortion access, that was a really big part of my identity, being a person who was affected by this shit. And, it was really hard because, like, men often get dismissed when it comes to, like, conversations about abortion. And so whenever I transitioned, I was even worried that, like, well, like, I'm a guy now, so people aren't going to listen to me when I talk about abortion, which is, like, kind of fucked. But then it was like, well, I do have a uterus and I can get pregnant. So, like, I still belong in this discussion, is what I told myself. But, like, honestly, abortion access affects everyone, whether or not you can get pregnant. Like, it should fucking matter to everybody, and every voice should be heard. Like, postmenopausal cis women who support abortion access. Also, let me rephrase that. Every voice should be heard. The only voices that should be heard are pro-choice voices, obviously. If your opinion is wrong, then you can be quiet. We got the same product we use for the turf super glue, new chapstick. We also have that product. It's available for anti-choice people. Very good product. Highly recommend. But it was really hard for me to, like, decide that, like, that was a thing I was okay with. To be a person who can't get pregnant. Like, I even talked to my my surgeon about it. The doctor who's going to be doing my hysterectomy. I was like, hey, like, I know this is what I want to do, but I have one last little stopgap that I'm trying to figure out. And it's this, like, like, having reproductive access rights, like, that shit really matters to me. And I kind of feel like my voice doesn't matter as much if I don't have a uterus. And I mean, that's what she told me. She was just like, it matters to everybody, like, you don't have to be a person with a uterus to, like, be an activist, to be a person who this matters to. And I'm just like, shit, you right. She's right. Something else I wanted to mention real quick is that cis people are also afraid of permanently changing shit on their bodies. It's true. Did you know? Even when it comes to things that don't have shit to do with, like, sex characteristics. I know 2 people who have had their thyroid removed due to, like, thyroid disorder or thyroid cancer. And both of these people were, like, a little bit freaked out about it. Because, like, holy shit, you're taking out a part of your body that is never going to be able to go back in. And you're going to have to, like, replace the hormones that it normally produces. And guys, I've just realized that, like, man, cis people act like it's the end of the fucking world to be on a hormone, on an exogenous synthetic hormone for the rest of your life. And they fucking get their thyroids removed and take exogenous synthetic hormones for the rest of their lives in the form of a pill. They have to take thyroid hormones. Yeah, it's a little bit infuriating. It's just slightly infuriating. Do y'all ever realize that a lot of cis people think that there are only two hormones? They think there's testosterone and estrogen, and if you change the levels of those, they have this belief that like natural is good, whatever your natural level is, that's the level you must stick with, or else you will get cancer and die. That seems to be the thing that a lot of them think. Man, could you imagine being so wrong but so confident like all the time? I would kill for that. Could you imagine like just being okay with being wrong loudly? Such confidence. It would be admirable if it wasn't so stupid. They always say it like that. They're like, I don't think you should be messing around with no hormones. It's funny. I was a linguistics major for a little bit, for a hot minute, and took some classes on American English dialects. So I should not stigmatize. I should not reinforce this stigma where like people who sound a little bit Southern or a little bit Midwestern are dumb, because it's more like an association rather than it's kind of a stereotype, kind of a not a cool thing to do. I can't help myself though. I just can't. Okay, so now we're getting on to the part where we're talking about like the nitty gritty of like the surgery itself and talking about like risks, outcomes, and all that good kind of stuff. Like we were talking about earlier, it makes perfect sense to be hesitant and fearful of something when you don't know what the fucking outcome is going to be. It feels a little bit like gambling. So something that you can do to ease those fears is to learn as much about your surgeon as possible and like their success rates, and like if it's something aesthetic, like something on the outside of your body, then you should be looking for as many before and after pictures as you can get your hands on, and you should save like a little folder of the before and after outcomes that you think are good, are ones that you would be happy to have. And you should get as many examples of those good outcomes, those good and consistent outcomes as you can. And when you inevitably run into something that your prospective surgeon has done that you're not happy with, you should also save those pictures, put it in another folder of like things that you would not want for your surgery outcome. And you should show these to your surgeon in your pre-op appointment. It's really important. This is something that I actually did before I had my top surgery. Like my surgeon actually came in to like, I had a couple of meetings with him. I think 3 meetings total before surgery. One was just like on the phone, and next one was in person, and the third one was just a couple of minutes before the surgery. Like I had little IV in my arm. I had my little gown on, very exciting. And that was the moment where I was like, hey, my dude, so just checking in, our final check-in. And I actually found these pictures. Like these I would be very, very happy with. But if I had an outcome like this, like I would maybe even regret my surgery almost. Like I wouldn't be happy with that. So he was able to look at that and be like, okay, got it. We will try our best to do one of these. And something that really set me at ease was that those good results that I would be happy with, which I am happy with, which I did get, he did that result very consistently. A lot of patients had that result. And so finding a surgeon who's consistent, that can like really set you at ease, and that can give you an idea of like what you can probably look forward to after you go through surgery. So you don't go through like all this shit of like fighting your insurance, setting up the appointment, traveling to the appointment, having somebody take care of you post-op, healing, recovery for several weeks, all that. It would really suck to have like a poor aesthetic outcome or like have complications, things like that. And so like it's really important that you do a lot of research on your surgeon and then communicate very clearly with your surgeon. And to communicate really clearly with your surgeon, I mean, there was the advice of like taking the pictures and showing those to your surgeon. Another thing that you can do, you should always prepare. You should always prepare for any doctor's appointment that you have, and you should take notes because you're always going to fucking forget something. And so I just have like a little notes checklist app on my phone, and every time I thought of something to ask, I would write it down. I had so many questions for my hysterectomy surgeon, and she was able to answer all of them, and I felt way better afterwards. I think looking at those before and after pictures and identifying deal breakers, like deal breaking outcomes, I think that can be like a really important part of preparing for surgery. Because if you look at all of their outcomes, like everything that you can find that's available, and you find like maybe like 5% or less, there's just like a surgery that you would not be happy with, that you would rather not have surgery if you had an outcome like that. The first thing to keep in mind is, again, like how many of those are there? If it's more than like 5%, I probably wouldn't go to that surgeon. But something else that you have to keep in mind is that if there's an aesthetic outcome that you don't like, there's a possibility that the patient who had that outcome asked for it specifically. The patient who has that outcome might be super fucking happy with it. Again, they might have wanted it like that and told the surgeon they wanted it like that. So that's something to keep in mind whenever you see like a post-op picture and you're like, don't really like that one. If the person who posted it has like information underneath, like if they posted it somewhere and like left some comments about it, like you can potentially ask them some questions. Reddit is a really good resource. There's also a website called Transbucket. Transbucket is a really good resource. I posted my post-op pictures there. Actually, I might even have posted my pre-op pictures there. I don't remember. Y'all might be able to look at my my old boobas that I threw in the trash if you go on that website. Okay, TERFs, trolls, haters, this is your chance. Get on PhotoBucket now so you can dox my titties. Do it. Do it. I posted it on a public website. You have so much power. So much power over me.
I quiver with fear.
So TLDR, regret rate is extremely fucking low. It's like 0.3% to 3.8%. 0.3% to 3.8%. Very low. Very good chance that you're... Let's see. That is a 96.2% chance that you're going to be happy with your surgery outcome. That, I mean, at least you're not going to regret it. And, okay, here's another little thing, okay? It comes to a point where you're, like, kind of making concessions, maybe. Like, what is good enough? And for me, okay, I think this is really important as well. For me, it wasn't just the way my chest looked. It wasn't just, like, the three-dimensionalness of, like, having boobas. It was also, like, the way that my chest would move if I was, like, running or going downstairs or something like that. And so something that I realized was, like, even if my chest was not perfect, and again, like, there is no perfect surgery outcomes. Oh, and another thing I actually forgot to say, you can get revisions. Revisions exist. Like, if you get an imperfect surgery outcome, you can get a revision at some point. So, like, it's not the fucking end of the world if you do get a surgery result that you're not happy with, okay? Please remember that. It's not the end of the world if you get a surgery result you're not happy with. Can always try again. Ideally, you'll find a surgeon who is very competent and consistent, and they will do it right the first time, so you don't have to go to surgery 2 times. But if something bad happens, it's not the end of the world, okay? Okay. I actually have a dog ear that's like a little puckering at the edge of the incision on my top surgery. And I could have gotten a revision, but I don't care. It's just not that bad. I'll actually show it to you guys. I don't remember what I was saying earlier. You have ADHD. Interrupting yourself and moving on to a different topic is a very dangerous game. Right. I had to go back and like listen to the video to figure out what I was talking about. So sometimes you have to make concessions because it's not going to be perfect. So for me, something that I realized that made me more comfortable going into surgery was that I knew I was going to be happier just if I had a flat chest. Like, let's say that like I had nipple loss, you know, because like sometimes a nipple graft can get infected, something can go wrong, and like um it can look a little bit strange, or it can look like there's not a nipple there. And that happens sometimes. It's like not super common, but it happens sometimes. And so that was something that I took into consideration before I went into surgery. And like, hey, if I only had like one nipple, or or if my nipples were in the wrong place or something like that, would I still be happier if I got surgery? Would that be an improvement? So I'm like trying to think of like improvement rather than fucking Elmer Fudd over here. Rather than perfection, rather than like ideally, the thing that I would have wanted, you know, is that I would have gotten on puberty blockers when I was 12. That's what should have happened to me. And it's a fucking shame. It's fucking criminal that that's not what happened to me. It's a shame that I got forced to go through the wrong puberty. I think that's something we can agree on, right? Transphobes, people who anti going through the wrong puberty. Just because it's the natural puberty doesn't mean it's the right one or the ethical one for the person who's going through it, does it? That's what should have happened. If the world was just and things went the way that they're supposed to go, then I never would have fucking grown boobs, and I never would have had to go through top surgery. But that's not the world that I lived in. That's not what happened to me. And so I had to decide, like, is having a big scar across my chest and potentially having nipples in the wrong place or something, or having one nipple, is having an imperfect and surgically altered chest better than having what I have? Like, would it be an improvement? And to me, yeah. Yeah, I figured out that, like, it would be. That would be a step up. It would make it easier for me to exercise. I wouldn't have to wear a binder anymore. I wouldn't, like, be getting acne and, like, abrasion against my skin on my chest and my back. I wouldn't be hurting the muscles in my back by binding, like, all the time. And I would just, even if my chest didn't look like fucking stellar, it was still going to be better. It was going to be better, like, because growing boobs, having boobs was just really wrong for me. But I did hella research on surgeons, looked at a butt ton of before and after pictures, found the guy I wanted to go to, found my dream surgeon, and it worked out. I got a really, really cool chest now. I'm really happy with. I told you guys that I was going to show you my my dog ear, so I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. I actually think that dog ear is a really gross name to call something on your skin or your body, but that's just what it's called. That's what doctors call it. So I'm getting so many texts from my D&D group right now. Holy heck. All right, so whenever my arms are down, it is not noticeable. Oh, you can kind of see it. It's just the slightest bit of puckering. And whenever I put my hands in the air, you see it? Just right at the edge of the incision. And it's really a personal preference thing. That's one of the things that you have to realize when it comes to surgery regret, is that everybody's got different standards, and everybody has like different things that makes them happy or makes them okay with surgery. For some people, having a flat chest after surgery, even if they have a big scar, even if they had nipples in the wrong place, they would rather have like a non-surgical looking outcome, if that makes sense. Like, for some people, they feel like they would be made dysphoric by having a chest that looked like mine, and that's okay. I don't really understand that personally. I don't really get it. I think my chest is fucking awesome. And look how much the color has faded. It used to be like super pink. My scars always do this thing. As another thing you got to remember is that after you get surgery, is probably gonna look a little bit rough. I'll put a little bit of pictures in here, but like, my bruising was crazy. It looked like I went through like a fucking car accident or something. And something that a lot of people get kind of disappointed about because they don't know what's gonna happen is that the scar tissue develops over time, like while you're recovering. So whenever you get out of surgery, you're like a week post-op, you have the thinnest little baby incision line because there's no scar tissue yet. It hasn't developed yet. And depending on like your genetics and how well you take care of it, etc. I have a video about scar care in case you're interested in that. But depending on how things turn out, like usually your scar is going to get pretty red and inflamed looking and angry looking. And it can, sometimes people are a little bit unhappy about the way that their surgery looks like right afterwards. Especially like some people get swelling, some people get like a little bit of fluid buildup, some people get scabbing. And when you get your surgical vest taken off, like a few days after surgery, some people can look at their chest and be like, oh my God, shit, what did I do to myself? And it can be a little bit scary for a little while. And yeah, I just think it's important to realize that like with any surgery you get, recovery is going to be hard. Recovery is always hard. And if you have like some kind of disability or any kind of like medical issues that can make recovery more difficult, then it's going to be extra hard for you and you're going to need a lot of help, and it's okay to ask for help. I'm going to put my shirt back on. Did y'all know that a lot of transphobic cis people will be like, it's inappropriate for post-op trans men to have their shirts off because they used to be boobs. I don't know. It's like they think that there is a soul inside of the boob, you know, like a woman's soul inside of the boobs. And even whenever you remove the boobs and put them in the incinerator, the spirit remains, 2 of them. There are so many ghosts in my body. I was, the other day I was, showing my girlfriend how to queef. No, this is inappropriate. I'm not telling you guys. Another part about like knowing yourself when it comes to like, am I an indecisive person? Am I like a difficult to be satisfied person? Am I a non-committal person? Another thing that you'll want to watch for is like, am I a person who struggles to take medication every day? Am I a person who isn't good at like doing maintenance for my body whenever that's something I need to do? Different surgeries can have like different aftercare requirements, and it's really important that you are capable of meeting the requirements, you know? So it's really important to know whether or not you can rely on yourself to like follow aftercare instructions, because following aftercare instructions, it can be a little bit challenging sometimes. And if you are the kind of person who does that, will you be able to at least temporarily make a change? Like for a few weeks while you're recovering, or potentially for several months, depending on like what kind of surgery you're getting and what kind of needs you're going to have. Are you going to be able to meet those needs? If you have to take antibiotics, are you going to be able to have a meal 2 times a day and take those antibiotics 2 times a day? Sometimes this can be a financial thing, like whether or not you have access to like good, healthy foods. I was supposed to be on a low sodium diet whenever I had my top surgery for like the first 3 weeks or something to prevent swelling. And I hate cooking, so it was actually like a little bit hard. If you have to do something like dilating every day or like a few times a week for several months, or perhaps like for the rest of your life, is that something that you realistically think that you can trust yourself to do? That can be a really hard decision, but I think it's like, you know, knowing yourself, knowing your patterns and your habits is really important. And you can change those. You can change your patterns and habits if you're not happy with them. And if you need to change them, you can do it. But like, it's always good to be aware of challenges that you might run into. And so that is a challenge you might run into if you have trouble keeping up with stuff like that. Okay, so that's all I have to say today. There's definitely some stuff that I've probably missed that could be helpful. But if you have any ideas of like stuff that I've missed, definitely leave those in the comments. I'm really... there's a lack of people talking about like really vulnerable trans stuff online. And so like if I can fill that space and like help give you guys a little bit more information and help you feel more like confident and ready, and I don't know, like I just want to help you guys out. So let's help each other out. Leave some comments. If you got any questions, let me know. And I will see you sometime. I don't know. If you want to see me more, I stream sometime on Twitch. I'll leave that in the description. Bye. My name's Jack and I love my papa. Hmm? You baby? Hmm? Are you the little guy? You are? I can't believe it. I can't believe he's a little guy. I need my microphone. Can you please give that back? Jack. Jack. What'd you say? You happy little guy?